about every month or so, something like that. I get someone at Echelon Front. I get a client, and we'll get this scenario that'll happen. And we kind of hinted about it on the last podcast that we did, the last Underground podcast that we did. You know, you got the client, Jim, who's the boss, and he's in charge of, Fred, one of the employees. And what's interesting when you're at Echelon Front, you talk to everybody in the chain of command. You talk to the C-suite, you talk to the mid-level managers, you talk to the frontline troopers, so you get input from everybody. You kind of know what's going on. And you get it from a few different angles. So anyways, you have this bad relationship here between Jim and Fred. Bad communication, things were breaking down. This is kind of brewing over time. And so Jim, the boss, he's going to sort it out. And so he has a call with Fred. He tells me, I'm going to have a call with Fred. And he gets, whatever, next day he calls me up. Yeah. I had a great conversation with Fred. And, I kind of know Jim. And I'm like, been talking to him. And so I kind of know what to expect a little bit. So I asked him a simple question. I just said, oh, great conversation. He's like, yeah. And I go, how much did you talk, Jim? And how much did Fred talk? And it was silence. Because when I asked that question, he knew. Jim knew that on that conversation with Fred, Jim had talked 90% of the time. I said, how much, I said, how much did you talk? How much did he talk? And he was quiet and he said, I talked too much. And I said, well, how much did you talk? What percentage? He said, I probably talked 98% of the time, which actually means he talked 98% of the time. So I've got news for you. That is not a, quote, good conversation. It's definitely not a great conversation. That's barely even a conversation. That's me just downloading. That's Jim just downloading on Fred. It's a one-way conversation. And that is not communication, because people forget that the most important part of communication is actually listening. It's not talking, it's listening. You ever heard that old school dating advice? Dating advice that says, oh, you go out with a girl, ask them about themselves and let themselves talk. You ever hear that? And it kind of works. Even if you're just meeting someone from a business situation, if you just ask them about themselves and let them talk, that's very positive. Usually ends up with a very positive, gives them a positive feeling, as opposed to you go in there and you just run your mouth for an hour and a half during dinner. Not positive. It's not good. We're not doing that.
No.
So what we want to do is, when we have problems, when we have drama, when we have issues with an employee, when we have problems, drama, or issues with a peer, when we have problems, drama, or issue with our boss, and we want to, quote, have a conversation about it, let me tell you what you do. You listen. You listen to what they're saying. By the way, this applies to children as well. This applies to your kids. When your kids are doing something that they shouldn't be doing, or when they're behaving in a way that they shouldn't be behaving, you have to actually listen to why they're doing it. You have to ask them a question and listen. Look, does that apply to a 5-year-old? Sometimes. Look, sometimes 5-year-olds do dumb things that you need to stop them from doing. But you get a kid that's 14 years old, you need to listen to what they're saying. You think you know everything. You think you do. You think you know everything. You think you know what's going through their mind. You don't. You have to listen. Your wife is mad? Listen. And I'm not saying go on to the warning that I gave on the last podcast. This doesn't mean like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? No, that's not what I'm talking about. We're not turning listening into interrogation. That's not what we're doing. Your wife's mad? Listen to what's happening. Listen to what she's saying. Your husband's in a bad mood? Listen. The more that you listen, the more you understand. The more you listen, oddly enough, the more you see. The more you listen, the more you see. Write that down. The more you listen, the more you see. You cannot be detached when your mouth is moving. You can't think and absorb information when you are putting out information. At least not effectively, at least not efficiently. So that's what we're doing. We're listening. There you go.
Take it.
Let's get into some Q&A.
That old school dating advice or whatever.
Yep.
They did I think it's like, they did a study. It's funny. I always laugh when people say they did this. Who did a study?
Yeah.
They did. Them.
Yeah.
Someone other than me that I read about did a study. So what had happened was, in a nutshell, through the study, that the guys and girls in this party scenario, right? And the guy, basically all the guy did was, and there's other techniques in this study like mirroring and some of that stuff, but all it was them asking questions about the other person and letting them talk. They didn't say the name of himself, nothing. They would just ask questions like about the other person. So this other person never knew the name of the subject, never knew anything about the subject. All they would do is get prompted to answer questions or whatever about themselves. And then there's like a ranking at the end of the thing where it's like who's the most memorable, likable, less all this stuff or whatever. And that guy who just did the asking about the other person, number one likable thing. And then they say, okay, why'd you like him? Whatever. He goes, I just felt like he really understood me and he was very easy to talk to, like all this stuff or whatever. And ranked number one across the board. Didn't even know his name.
Big scam, right?
Yes, one big scam.
But damn, like that's just proof, that study, and I actually think that study was conducted by the University of Bro Science. That is a Bro Science university.
Bro Science yep.
But yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Like you let people talk, you listen to what they're saying. They're going to be appreciative of that.
Yeah.
As opposed to you freaking barking at them. Shut the hell up, man.
You know what's funny? When you kind of detach, right? I learned that. When you're barking at someone, or actually not even barking, like go back to the situation with Fred or whatever, the one you're saying where he was like, I had a great conversation with them or whatever. They're literally doing the exact same thing. They're just on the other end of it.
Yeah.
So see what I'm saying? So like
they feel like it was a great conversation.
Exactly right. So Fred, whoever's the one who had the great conversation is the person talking about themselves the whole time. It's the same exact thing. Yeah, totally. They're just falling for it on themselves kind of thing,
The thing it doesn't show is like the person that talked about themselves is not liked.
Yeah.
So Jim, like Fred thinks it's a great conversation. Jim thinks it's a great conversation because he talked the whole time. Fred's more pissed than he was at the beginning of the conversation.
Yep. Ask him why. Well, he just wouldn't shut the hell up.
Wouldn't shut up.
Yeah.
Doesn't listen to me.
Doesn't listen.
Didn't respect me.
Doesn't understand.
So there you go. Man, that's such a key component.
Big deal. It's a big deal for sure.
Listen up, people.
Listen up.